1.175 trillion rand. Based on declining economic outlook in 2016, as detailed in the February 2017 budget documents, this was subsequently revised at the MTBPS to 1.152 trillion rand and further revised downwards at the budget speech this year to 1.144 trillion rand. SARS collects 90% of all government revenue, and hence their achievement that will be announced by the Commissioner today is of national significance. At the outset, I would like to clarify that we will only be covering the issues pertaining to the revenue announcement today. Given the magnitude of the announcement and its importance to South Africa, it is imperative that we focus on the matter at hand. However, I would like to make a few remarks before the Commissioner gives you a more detailed overview. It is important to remember that all South Africans pay tax. Whether they pay tax on their incomes, VAT on goods and services purchased, or corporate tax on the companies they work for, all South Africans contribute towards funding our democracy. South Africans should be proud of their high level of tax compliance. The numbers being reported today bear testimony to the fact that the South African Revenue Service remains an asset of great value to South Africa, with 14,500 employees who are committed to doing their bit in ensuring the fiscal sovereignty for South Africa. SARS has an international stature which is the envy of many, and hence is an asset that we have to cherish and protect. The continued effectiveness of this institution is incumbent on the trust and credibility that it has painstakingly built over many years. I know that many of you are discerning journalists who understand the dynamics of the macroeconomy and the mechanics of the fiscus. As noted in the 2017 National Budget Speech, the projected rate of economic growth is not sufficient to reduce unemployment or impact significantly on poverty and inequality. It falls well short of our NDP goals. I am of the very firm view that to wage a sustained offensive on unemployment, poverty, and inequality, indeed to create the volumes of jobs we need as a country, it is urgent that we return our economy to growing faster, inclusively, and on a sustained basis. I am sure that in the coming weeks, months, and years, we shall have occasion to reflect a little bit more on this, as these three adjectives are vital and related one to the other. One of them without the other two is neither sufficient nor necessary, and neither are the two without the third, but we need all of them working together in order for us to conquer the triple challenges. Before handing over to Commissioner Moyane, let me briefly touch on some key points. It is very important to note that the revenue collected by SARS as of midnight 31 March 2017 has been done in a current economic growth rate of 0.3% as published by Stats SA. The poor economic conditions clearly play their part in our revenue collection ability. The changes we have noticed in the economy mean shifts in the tax bases for various taxes. Changes in the economy may also lead to changes in the behavior of economic agents and taxpayers. Large shifts are likely to lead to significant changes in the short-run buoyancy ratios of various tax types, which can be estimated once the relevant economic aggregates have been measured. SARS has attained annual tax revenue collection growth rates since the financial crisis of close to 10% per annum on average. This growth far exceeds the tax revenue collection growth rates attained by South Africa's peers, and also that of several OECD countries. As government, our focus is now very much on the radical transformation of our economy so that all those who live in South Africa can benefit from that economy. Tough and unpopular choices need to be made to ensure such a vision. The success story of SARS is one we should truly be proud of as a country. As highlighted in the budget speech earlier this year, South Africa has built one of the most effective tax authorities in the developing world. SARS has made huge strides over the past decade in enforcing the law, whilst providing assistance to small businesses and individuals. At the same time, it has ensured that many South Africans are encouraged to comply with their tax obligations without being threatened with penalty. I have been informed that due to SARS' incredible collection efforts, National Treasury was spared from going into the market to borrow money in the past few days. I am mindful that we have a corresponding obligation as government to improve the impact of every rand spent and to eliminate waste, inefficiency, and corruption. To the topic at hand, though, despite difficult economic times, our SARS officials were not to be distracted, but focused on the task at hand and were able to induce both individual South Africans as well as corporates to pay their taxes and thus fulfill our obligations to the Republic. SARS has been asked to achieve an ambitious target in such challenging economic times. So if we were to achieve this or get close to it, a heroic effort would have been required. Looking on from outside the financial family previously, I knew that whilst this was a challenging task, it was certainly not insurmountable. Let me reiterate my hope that each and every South African appreciates the importance of the South African Revenue Service and its work. Given the economic situation as highlighted in the budget speech a few weeks ago, and by the Reserve Bank Governor, Lesetja Kganyago, recently, South Africa can ill afford to borrow more than we budgeted for. SARS is an absolutely critical fiscal organization in this country, and the Republic needs it to work well. I thank you. I shall now hand over to the Commissioner to take on from where I left. Thank you.
Minister of Finance, Honorable Malusi Gigaba, Deputy Minister of Finance, Honorable Sfiso Buthelezi, Director General of the National Treasury, Mr. Lungisa Fuzile, members of the SARS Executive Committee present here this afternoon, senior officials of the SARS Revenue Services, senior officials of the National Treasury, members of the media, good afternoon. Ladies and gentlemen, it gives me great pleasure to announce that as at midnight, the 31st of March 2017, SARS has collected 1.144 trillion, in line with the revised estimate as announced by the former Minister of Finance in the February 2017 budget speech. The preliminary results show SARS having exceeded the revised estimate by over 300,000 rands. Much more significant is that for the second year in a row, SARS broke the trillion rand mark. We're also pleased to announce a growth in refunds for the same financial period of 8.6%. VAT refunds included, outstripping revenue growth, which was 7%. This level of precision to achieve revenue estimates have been commented on favorably by the International Monetary Fund and speaks to the sophistication of SARS forecasting methodologies and our ability to step up to the plate in tough times. This achievement reflects on a year-on-year growth of 7%, which is normally achieved in boom times. This is an outstanding achievement, given the 0.3 real growth in GDP for the 2016 announced by Stats South Africa in March 2017. If one looks at the tax to GDP ratio, which is internationally accepted norm to measure the efficiency of a tax administration to extract revenue from the economy, the tax to GDP ratio of 26% maintained by SARS speaks to the remarkable resilience of this organization to extract tax from a stagnating or ailing economy. Let us address ourselves to the tough economic conditions. SARS revenue realization was made even more difficult given significantly declining consumption levels, constrained further by an interest hike cycle and deteriorating business confidence. The declining currency exchange rate provided real challenges to foreign business exposure. As noted in the 2017 national budget speech, the projected rate of economic growth is not sufficient to reduce unemployment or impact significantly on poverty and inequality. It falls short of our National Development Plan goals, in particular in the following areas. Mining continued to underperform. Mining and manufacturing employment declined by over 80,000 jobs in 2016. 2, weak business confidence and low levels of profitability weighed on investment across all sectors. 3, though the policy interest rate was increased by 2 percentage points since 2014, inflation ended the year above the target, with food prices continuing to reflect the impact on agriculture due to drought and poor rainfall. And finally, lower growth in our trading partners in Africa and elsewhere has contributed to sluggish exports earnings. The theme for this year across the whole of SARS was mounting and summiting Mount Everest. We chose this theme cognizant of the fact that we had a stretch target to deal with. The printed estimate for 2016-2017, announced in February 2016, of 1.175 trillion required a nominal 9.8 revenue growth year on year. At that stage, the GDP growth forecast was anticipated to be 1.2%. Since February 2016, the economic growth continued to decline. The Revenue Analysis Working Committee, in short, ROC, comprising of SARS, the National Treasury, and the Reserve Bank, recommended a downward revision of the revenue target to 1.152 trillion. That was announced at the medium-term budget speech. This was based on an economic growth rate of 0.5%. In its meeting prior to the budget speech in February, the ROC further recommended a downward revision of the revenue target to 1.144 trillion based on economic growth rate of 0.5%. This was a significant revision downward from the printed estimate of 1.175 trillion by 30 billion for the 2016-2017 financial year, according to the 2017 budget, is not about SARS' ability to collect revenue, but is attributable to the following. 1, customs duties being down by 6.5 billion as a result of contraction in real terms in imports. 2, VAT similarly being dragged down by import VAT collections to an underperformance by 11.3 billion. And finally, personal income tax, for long being the anchor of revenue collection, underperforming by 15.2 billion. The growth of PIT year to date has declined from the levels exceeding 12% to about 9% as a result of lower wage settlements, containment of bonus payments and job losses. Let me remind all South Africans that in 2009-2010 financial year, we had a 60 billion downward revision as contrasted to the 30 billion that we spoke about. The tax buoyancy is an important indicator as it measures the extent of the tax at which the tax revenue vary with changes in economic growth. South African tax revenue has remained buoyant despite tough economic conditions. The buoyancy for 2016-2017 financial year against Stats South Africa latest GDP growth figure is 0.9. This is remarkable and close to the long-term average. Let me stress once again that our tax to GDP revenue ratio of 26% is well above South Africa's peers and certainly on par with mid-2000s when South Africa had a strong economic growth aided by higher commodity prices, that which we refer to as the boom period. What are the revenue trends? The revenue collection for 2016-2017 has showed us certain important trends, which are, for the first time, post the financial crisis, the growth rate of personal income tax for a long time, the mainstay of our revenue framework, declined to a single-digit growth. For the financial year under review, personal income tax grew by less than 9%, significantly down from the average of 12%. This is a result of the curtailment of the wage bill through lower wage settlements and low bonuses, as well as significant job losses in the South African economy. 2, the significant decline in trade, especially imports, has devastated impact of trade taxes, the main one being import VAT and customs. Import VAT declined by 1.3% year on year, and customs duties in turn contracted by 1.2%. Thirdly, on the back of a stronger commodity growth, the company income tax improved by 7% year on year. Finally, significantly, dividends grew by whopping 30% year on year, reflecting the forestalling effect of in anticipation of rate hikes. What has been the efforts by our organization, the South African Revenue Services? Today's revenue result is another South African and SARS success story, and I'm proud as the commissioner of this great institution. Whilst marginally exceeding the target, make no mistake that this is still a success story. The revenue collection result is by no means a surprise. South Africa has built one of the most effective tax authorities in the developing world, and SARS has made huge strides over the past decade in ensuring compliance, whether by service, education, and enforcement. Ladies and gentlemen, members of the media, it would be remiss of me not to sound a word of caution. We are seeing the beginning of a disturbing trend whereby tax compliance levels are beginning to deteriorate. We believe that the continuous negative media coverage and comments by those outside SARS over the past 18 months is having a negative impact on taxpayers and tax morality. With respect to their confidence in the South African tax systems, we cannot afford this. Every decision made by the current leadership draws from the organization's mandate and the legal framework that governs SARS. It is no secret that SARS places tremendous attention on the security of information. The South African Revenue Services Act, our policies and other national legislations mandate our organization to ensure that information is always protected and secured. A large aspect of our mandate necessitates working with sensitive and confidential taxpayer and trader information. This is a responsibility that we take very seriously. This is manifested in strict security controls and protocols. Taxpayer confidence in SARS is mission critical to ensure and encourage good fiscal citizenship. I want to touch on the reported concerns about erosion of integrity at SARS and loss of skills. Media reports stating that, I quote, The biggest problem we face in South Africa today is an erosion of the integrity of SARS close quote. Have also been hugely problematic to us. We find that suggestion baseless, unfairly subjective, and devoid of the facts. SARS a fully functioning executive committee, albeit with some key vacancies, and the 14,500 committed employees who are doing their bit to ensure we meet our mandate. The loss of skills is certainly not true. Since the 1st of April 2017, 279 employees left the organization through the resignations, retirement, and other forms. While we have recruited at the same period 321 new employees. In particular, in ensuring we have sufficient capacity to deal with the critical issues such as illicit financial flows, base erosion, and pay profit shifting, we have advertised 23 positions. Of these, 9 employees have been appointed, 5 are in the process of being appointed, and 9 will be filled by graduates. In the area of BAPS and illicit financial flows, we are expected to complete 37 audits by the end of this financial year. Incidentally, SARS undertook 31,958 training sessions to upskill our employees. I therefore, as a commissioner of SARS, find the comments extremely regrettable. I once again want to urge those who have concerns to deal with us directly. We are inspired by the key and the words of Aristotle, who said, I quote, "Excellence is never an accident. It is always the result of high intention, sincere effort, intelligent execution. It represents the wise choices of many alternatives. Choice, not chance, determines your destiny," close quote. Despite the constant barrage of negativity towards our institution by some of the public domains, SARS was still to be able to have a very successful personal income tax season. Let me assure you that all is well within our PIT. The only problems are economic in nature and have resulted in job losses leading to smaller pay-as-you-earn earnings. For the tax season that was closed in 2016, SARS received 5.7 million returns by the close of tax season for non-provisional taxpayers on Friday, the 25th of November, 2016, comprising of the following: 4.16 million submissions by individual tax, 47,000 submissions by trusts, 1.5 million returns for previous year tax from individuals and trusts. The SARS Contact Center handled more than 3.6 million calls. The SARS branch offices assisted more than 5.1 million taxpayers. SARS processed 99.9% of all returns electronically. 92.4% of tax returns were assessed within 3 seconds. 93.28% of refunds were paid to taxpayers within 72 hours. 172,000 taxpayers made use of Help You e-file channel, which is 15% higher than the 2015 financial year. And finally, 44,373 made use of SARS mobile application to submit the 2016 tax returns. What did we do to make things better? Special initiative to collect revenue. Despite the seemingly insurmountable hurdles, what has made me proud of the team was our commitment to achieving our revenue target. Despite these hurdles, we're successful in our efforts. I must say, at times we thought it would not be possible. The revenue outcomes I've announced are a result of SARS becoming more clinical and methodical when it comes to revenue planning. Revenue collection is not seen as a once-off event, but rather an ongoing effort, 365 days a year effort. The challenges we faced in meeting the target forced us at SARS to intensify our revenue efforts and develop innovative approaches, including special revenue initiatives. The tenets of our plan introduced in 2015-2016 financial year continue to bear fruits. These include: 1, managing the overall performance of the special initiative programs. These programs were designed to curtail tax leakages, identify opportunities to close the tax gap, and ensure that all revenues were collected in the correct reporting period. Secondly, the development of extensive business continuity plans and disaster recovery measures. Thirdly, deployment of a senior executive to champion regional steering committees in order to facilitate cross-divisional cooperation, pollination, and optimize workforce planning. But finally, and most importantly, the SARS ESCO team revenue visits to all SARS regional revenue forums during this period, which gave us guidance and provided us with the regional revenue plans and insights as to what is happening within the organization. I want to address the issues of compliance. In executing our mandate, the South African Revenue Services balances three levers, which are service, education, and enforcement. As has been the case previously, SARS will continue to focus on all pillars of our compliance, namely registration, filing, declaration payment, in order to reduce the tax gap. Improved compliance will be pursued in a variety of ways, including educational, outreach, and enforcement activities. I would like to address the elephant in the room, the issue of refunds. Let me emphasize that SARS over the past few years has changed the nature of refunds 360 degrees. Gone are the old days of refunds being a manual process taking 180 days to process. However, complaints and frustrations of taxpayers about outstanding refunds, particularly pertaining to value-added tax, have not gone unnoticed. SARS would like to assure taxpayers that is not due to lack of concern, care, or efficacy of SARS. SARS has not changed its approach to refunds. It continues to implement its systems and processes that are tried and tested, which have been in place for several years. SARS does not understand that when a taxpayer is expecting a refund, they certainly do not want to be faced with delays. It is with this in mind that SARS has put in place systems and processes to ensure minimum delays in payments of refunds. This has resulted in 89% of VAT refunds payments, while only 11% of cases are allocated to a detailed audit. As at the 31st of January 2017, SARS paid VAT refunds totaling 154.4 billion versus the same period last year of 142.8 billion, making a 9% increase or 12.6 billion more than the previous years. But it is important to balance this approach with addressing the risk of processing payments that could be a result of fraud as well as insufficient documentation to substantiate such as a refund. Due to an increase in fraud, SARS has enhanced taken a risk-based approach in our business processes. To date, SARS has prevented 23.8 billion in fraudulent refunds from being paid, and hence the additional scrutiny being applied to high-risk cases. On the same breath, we'd like to deal with the investigation of the Office of the Tax Ombudsman. SARS would like to place on record its full support of the investigation of the Tax Ombudsman. Given the recent reports about VAT refunds, we are confident that the results of this investigation will provide South African public with the requisite confidence in SARS systems. It is in the interest of SARS and the public to finally find closure and the finality to this issue. SARS and the Office of the Tax Ombudsman convened a collective engagement at executive management level to discuss the existing challenges whereby both parties agreed on a regular operational engagement solutions that are now in place. SARS is making a concerted effort to build a collaboration and to mitigate existing challenges experienced through these frequent operational engagement sessions. Honorable Minister and Deputy Minister, in conclusion, whilst we are here today to provide detail and context behind the revenue collection results, I want to emphasize that it is important to recognize that SARS does not operate in a vacuum or in isolation of our environment. I must acknowledge that despite the trying times, the 14,500 men and women SARS employees remained focused, committed, and tenacious when it comes to serving our country despite the distractions. I would like to take this opportunity to thank my executive committee, senior managers, and 14,500 men SARS officials who have contributed significantly to this effort, for this exceptional work they are putting into meeting our commitment to all South Africans. I continue to be humbled by your commitment and energy. Once again, I want to defer to Aristotle, who reminds us that, I quote, "When a team outgrows individual performance and lends team confidence, excellence becomes a reality," close quote. I look forward to many successes with you. Moreover, I would like to express my heartfelt thanks to National Treasury and the Reserve Bank teams for all their support and guidance. Last but certainly not the least, thanks to each and every South African who contributed to the tax revenue today. Without you, this target would not have been achieved. Your contribution helps government to create a better South Africa. Indeed, mintiro ya vulavula. Thank you very much.
Colleagues, when the commissioner started, you will have seen a lot of high fives going on up front here. I felt a bit left out because this team, part of the reason is because they were kept in the dark with this number. They knew particular numbers up to, we had to embargo these numbers. And so if you saw them giving each other high fives, it's precisely that they had to pat themselves in the back for a job well done. Let me risk my job. And let me risk my job. Minister, I did a quick scan in the room here when you had that Freudian slip of Home Affairs. And I went back to our early days when we were still troublemakers, when the minister used to hide behind me and say, when the Home Affairs police come, you should be the first one to be deported. Because you could only, we needed to smile for you to be able to see where we were looking. So I realized that, Minister, I still make you look like a yellow bone even now. So we will, if you decide to fire me for that, Minister, I have enough sub stewards in the room here to defend me. Colleagues, I think let's, the members of the media should be ready with their questions. The questions will be answered from where the commissioner and the minister are sitting. In the event the commissioner decides there is a particular question that he will want one of his team members to respond to, he will direct as to who might have more details on that specific matter. So, Karen, let me start with you. Yeah, go ahead.
My question is for the Minister of Finance. We know that, I know you said you don't want to address anything outside of the SARS revenue issue, but the most important, one of the most important issues that you're dealing with now is the potential of a rating downgrade, and we know that you have reportedly met with rating agencies. How did you manage to, or can you convince them that South Africa is still a stable and political climate when the president has reportedly fired your predecessor off the back of a fake intelligence report? And what guarantees do we have that we aren't going to be downgraded, because that will have massive and terrible implications for the poorest of the poor.
Just to make sure that Karen doesn't set a tone for the questions that we need to, and I'm not suggesting that those questions shouldn't be asked, but can we go upfront, deal with the SARS and preliminary results questions, and at the back of that, can we then deal with the rest of the other questions? Because I'm certain that a number of you want to address varied matters, but I will appreciate that we start with the matters at hand, and then we can proceed from there. You already have the mic.
Thank you, Shlengani. Commissioner Moyane, congratulations on breaking the 1 trillion mark again. I want to ask you, you touched on the fact that there's a sudden different economic behavior, meaning saying that taxpayers suddenly seems unwilling to pay, or that there's a different behavior than previous. And I think we would have, you want to say that we would have had an even better collection figure than before if that didn't happen. So, and part of that, I wondered if you can give us more reasons for that, because this is taxpayers that has previously been valiant taxpayers, if we want to call it that, and you blame the media for it. But now I have a question about Mr. Jonas Makwakwa. He's your second in command, your right hand, and we had reports a year ago, almost to the day, that he was embroiled in an alleged strange lot of transactions. There was an investigative report given to you in May, and then at the end of last year there was new allegations emanating from your office, and you were given a report again that he apparently or allegedly wanted to intervene on behalf of a taxpayer, the Mpisanis, at the behest of their tax situation. Now, isn't that more of a reason that taxpayers feel we can just get someone in SARS to help us with this? Can you tell us, after that, just question B, what is the status of the investigation into Mr. Makwakwa? And Minister, to you, have you been briefed about the Makwakwa situation? And what will you do about the second in command of SARS being accused of corruption?
Arabil.
Thank you so much, Shlengani. Arabile Komete, Bloomberg News. My question to either the Minister or the Commissioner really is, given the reshuffle that we've now just had, you've spoken a lot about tax morality. Do you think, and of course, initially that was based on the relationship you may have had with the previous minister, do you feel that the appointment of the new minister may help tax morality, or will it also have a negative stance on that? And at the same time, given these numbers, do you think we'll be able to achieve and perhaps exceed the projected budget deficit? We have a supposed 3.1% for the 2017-2018 period as well. Thank you.
Fariel.
Thank you very much, Mr. Shlengani. May I ask, Commissioner, which data sets do you use to determine whether it's the economy or institutional weakening that is seeing this downward trend in our tax collections, although I acknowledge the number that you gave out? And also, may I inquire after the investigations into the Robert Wang case, the Nkandla tax fringe benefit, the Mpisani case, and also the Mark Liffman case? Maybe not all of them. Thank you.
Miriam.
Thank you, Jabulani. I don't know if
Miriam, Jabulan is doing part of my job at the Reserve Bank. Shlengani has jumped to SARS.
Okay, right. Well, my first question is definitely for Minister Gigaba. At the beginning of your statement, you said that the success of the revenue collection that we've seen in the past year has enabled you to avoid borrowing on international markets for the time being. I just wondered if in any way you're suggesting that we don't have to borrow the $2 billion a year, which the Treasury predicted in its February budget. My second question relates back to the budget as well, but it's also a tax issue. And we did ask the question of the previous minister. The new tax bracket is projected to generate over a quarter of revenues, of PIT revenues this coming year. And yet, it is supposed to come from around 1.4% of the tax-paying population. And I just wondered, given that these people are skilled and mobile, is there any concern that they might leave the country and look for pastures elsewhere? My third question is just a small discrepancy between the written statement from the Commissioner and the verbal statement. On page 11, in reference to the VAT refunds, the statement says 155.4 billion rand were collected compared to the same period last year. But the Commissioner, when he was actually speaking, he said 154.4 billion. And I just wanted to check whether this was a typo. Thank you.
If I don't call you by name, you may have to introduce yourself. It means I haven't dealt with you before.
It's Inge Lamprecht from MoneyWeb. Mr. Moyane, you mentioned that tax compliance levels are beginning to deteriorate. Can you provide more detail as to exactly what this means? Are provisional taxpayers starting to withhold their payments, and how is SARS dealing with this? And then my second question is to Minister Gigaba. The Commissioner referred to a statement previously attributed to Judge Davis about the erosion of the integrity of SARS. Minister Gigaba, where does your appointment leave the work of the Davis Tax Committee? Thank you very much.
Okay, so go ahead.
Good morning, Mfoneko from Reuters News. Two questions. I just wanted to ask, in terms of the Special Voluntary Disclosure Program, can you give us an update on how much has been collected so far? I think previously the Treasury has said that 600 million has already been collected, and the deadline is in August, so can you just give us an update on those figures? And I wanted to ask, are you going to give us a budget balance figure today? If not, can you tell us why? Thanks.
You are the last one for this round.
Okay, a question for the Commissioner, please. John Fraser, ZA Confidential. Commissioner, what's your relationship like with the new Minister? Is it better than it was with the last one? And are you relieved that Pravin Gordhan was sacked before he had a chance to get you removed?
Minister and the Commissioner, you can answer from where you are.
Thank you. Okay, yeah. Now, with regard to the first question, with regard to the reasons why there was a cabinet reshuffle, I am not the president. I don't know the intelligence report. I've not had sight of it. I can't comment on it. Where I stand, I get called and instructed as to changes that are going to take place. I don't ask questions. I simply comply with the instructions given to me. And I certainly think there is so much more going on in our country for us to believe that changing a single individual can cause a ratings downgrade. Certainly, at a broader level, from where I am concerned, from where I sit, I am concerned that the type of discussion and rancor that has taken place in our public space over the last few days will cause uncertainty, will cause concerns. But I think that we have it within ourselves as a nation to manage whatever changes have taken place. Greater changes have taken place in South Africa before, and we've managed those changes, and I think we will continue to do that. And so to the extent that the ratings agencies may have a particular assessment, I can't comment on that, but we are certainly going to manage the changes that have taken place in the country, and I think South Africa is capable of managing changes in individuals when we actually managed successfully changes in social systems before. Secondly, on the question of Mr. Makwakwa, I have not been briefed yet. The meeting I had with the EXCO of SARS this morning was only a brief introductory meeting, and there is an extensive meeting that is yet to come about the operations of the organization and every other matter related to that. With regard to the question whether the appointment of a new minister will result in any drop in tax morality, I'm sure that South Africa faced that question in 1996 too. There was a change in ministers at finance, which was abrupt, sudden, unexpected. A new minister without experience in the portfolio came in. The country was at a transition. There was great uncertainty, but yet we moved on. There were changes in 2009, in 2014, I meant to say, and yet we moved on. And I certainly think that whatever changes, as I have answered, that have taken place in the National Executive, you are asking a wrong guy about these changes. I didn't effect them. I'm also affected by them. But from where I sit, I believe that whatever those changes may have been, however we feel about them, we will move on. Let me say that I'm an experienced politician. I've been in the National Executive for 13 years now. I've been a minister for 7 of those years. I hold a master's degree. I'm quite educated. I am a PhD student. I am a PhD student, so I'm quite a well-educated chap. I have no doubt as to my ability to grapple with the challenges of whatever portfolio I may be given, whatever portfolio I say. So I don't think anybody should doubt my capacity to adapt and adjust to the new portfolio. And I certainly will. I think that there must come a time when, as the nation, we move on. I don't think we need to be tied to individuals. I certainly, as Malusi Gigaba, was not born to be Minister of Home Affairs, and that if I am moved from Home Affairs, then the heavens must fall. I certainly was not born to hold any particular position anywhere. I may be moved from Treasury tomorrow or next week or next year if the president feels that they need to make changes. And life will go on, the country will remain. The institutions that we have built are solid. The National Treasury is a solid institution with well-competent officials and skilled officials, experienced, led by an experienced Director General who has been with the National Treasury for 22 years. 19. Yes, 19 years. The different institutions that we have built in the country, I think, are sufficient to deal with any changes in the political executive, because those changes must be expected that from time to time will happen. And when they happen, we don't always get informed as to why. Because even the speculation about the intelligence report, I don't know, I was not there. And so I can't confirm that there was any such report. So my view is the institutions we have built are robust, they're foolproof, they're capable of withstanding any changes in the political leadership that may or does take place from time to time. And so life will move on after the shock, the anxiety, the uncertainties. South Africa will go on. We need to create jobs. That's the top priority. We need to create inclusive, we need inclusive growth. That's our top priority. We need to address poverty. And the revenue that has been collected in the previous year, continuing to be in excess of R1 trillion, is, I think, proof of the fact that, because the uncertainties we're talking about didn't start last week. They've been there for quite a long time. And throughout all of that period, the country was still able to comply with their tax obligations, and we collected over R1 trillion in revenue. We need to pat ourselves in the back as the nation and be happy about the progress we have made. The commissioner raises concerns that there seems to be a decline in tax compliance. He doesn't say that this decline has been perpetual or that it will persist. He's raising a concern that we all must pay attention to. Tax compliance is not only by individuals, it's also by corporates. And the country previously has raised concerns about our tax morality as a nation, that we need to comply with our tax obligations, because not to do so robs the nation of the resources we need to be able to address the concerns of our people. And I am here to support SARS in the execution of their tasks, to lead the department, the National Treasury, to ensure that they persist in their task and mandate of prudent financial management. In actual fact, the executive committee, who are your permanent official bureaucrats, are well skilled in what they have to do. And so I repeat again, the country has got very strong and robust institutions capable of executing their tasks, whatever changes may occur in the national executive. And none of us as politicians were born to occupy particular positions. The question about whether, yes, with regard to the revenue that we've collected and the impact it has had on us recently, the National Treasury has not revised its borrowing plans, so they remain in place. I think everything changes on the balance of the evidence given concrete factors that are considered. We continue to experience slow economic growth. We continue to experience exclusive economic growth. We continue to be concerned that the slow growth in the economy has an impact on our revenue collection, on our tax compliance. And so we are keen that we should support the ongoing plans in government to grow our economy and come up with additional interventions that will also assist the economy to grow more robustly on a sustainable basis, so that we can have more people earning incomes, more small and medium enterprises emerging, more industrial manufacturing companies emerging. We should have more people getting employed. so that we increase our tax base and therefore see this, the South African fiscus growing at a faster and higher rate. Are we concerned that because of addition of people of the new decisions announced in the budget this year, people will leave the country because they may now be expected to pay more tax? I think those who would have wanted to leave would have left. The reason why they are still in the country is because they didn't come here not to pay tax. They came here because of the opportunities our economy offers them. They came here because of the opportunities, economic opportunities that are available in our country. And I believe that, you know, given my previous role just last week, Thursday, I am aware that a whole lot of companies are applying for corporate visas, for work visas, for business visas in order to bring skills to South Africa. The changes in the visa regulations with regard to people with critical skills are actually proving to be an attraction to many people who want to bring their critical skills here. I think that South Africa would benefit more in encouraging people to take advantage of the many programs and opportunities we have than spend a lot of our times fighting and quibbling about whether this means that or that doesn't mean this, doesn't this reverse that. We lose a lot of opportunities by such quibbling and not focusing on the task at hand. And I think all of us have a responsibility to support the plans to bring critical skilled people, people with critical skills. We have a responsibility to work together to attract tourists to our country, to increase the numbers of people who can visit South Africa, to take advantage of many programs that we have that will bring the people we need in the country who will contribute to the economy of our country. And I think the debates must go on, will go on. Nobody is curtailing them. But those with the task to execute their mandates in government, in the private sector and elsewhere, must continue to work together to do that, bearing in mind that our success in that regard is of enormous benefit to South Africa. With regard to the Davis Commission, I have not been briefed yet. The DG and his executives are still to meet with me. I came in when there were a number of burning issues. So I have had to try and attend to those burning issues and get some briefings as we go on. I had an extensive meeting well into the night yesterday with the commissioner, not to look at SARS as a whole, but to look at these results. I asked him a lot of questions to try and understand what the results mean, their implications, and what we need to do to support their work. And I'm sure when we meet with the ExCo of SARS, the ExCo of the department, we will be able to take forward the various issues that they bring and to use our leadership responsibility to assist them in that regard. John, your question was to, well, there was a question that was asked that related to me too, on the relationship with the commissioner. I don't come here with preconceived ideas. I've not been given by anybody a handout of what to come here, do, watch out for, who to look out for. I come here with only one mandate: lead National Treasury and the agencies under it to manage our country's financial resources. Work with the people who are there. Now, surely, I do know the commissioner. I know him very well, actually, for a long time. And from the time I was Deputy Minister of Home Affairs and he was working at DTI. We worked with him to transform the government printing works into a government component, to convert it into an entity with modern, highly secure equipment to be able to print in a highly secure environment our smart ID cards and our passports, is responsible for that. So that relationship, I maintain a professional relationship with him. And I think that we are going to work well. I don't bring with me issues which may have been happening before before Thursday last week. I come, as I say, with no preconceived ideas. I have no presumptions about even anybody. I am just here to execute my mandate, and I will execute that mandate to the best of my ability. Thank you.
Good afternoon. I think the first thing that you really need to do is to congratulate the Commissioner and the whole SARS family. We're all holding our breath because this overachievement, we thought that was not going to happen. So when we met, so I think I think you really deserve a big round of applause. I was also watching the front desk here. Well, I had an advantage because I already knew the numbers. Ne? I saw tears were coming out of your ears. She was really crying. That's how passionate these people are with their work. I think we really appreciate what you are doing. There is this thing which I think as South Africans we need to start doing. Let's celebrate our successes. I think that's very important. Yeah. If I may make an example, there's a football team here which are African champions. I'm not a Sundown supporter. I'm a Morocco Swallows supporter.
You still declare
Yeah. Yeah. But I think what Sundowns did is something that we are supposed still to be celebrating even today. But we have just shut off the success and we have moved on. We like concentrating on the things which don't take us forward. I think that's, I just wanted to say that. But again, there is no doubt, I think all economic theories have proved that the collection of tax the revenue that we collect is a function of the performance of the economy. No doubt about that. So we can talk about the numbers and say we suppose are going to collect R1 billion more and so on. The focus of this country should be to grow inclusive economy. And underline inclusive economy, I'll tell you why. There's a question which has come up here about what the increase in the tax bracket can do to people. There's a possibility, for instance, a hypothesis is being put that perhaps some people may be starting to emigrate because of the increased tax rate. Well, I don't know the immigration equation, but I would imagine there are many other explanatory variables which explain why people emigrate, right? You may have those variables again as to what weighting you are giving to each and every one of those variables is the next thing. There are a number as a platform.
Not discuss the names in this meeting. However, you are aware that
it can be a major thing. So that's why I'm then saying let's concentrate on inclusive growth, because that's going to allow government not to increase tax. That's going to put a number of people, for instance, you have got only 100,000 people who are going to be affected by this increase of the tax rate. Only 100,000 people. If we had many people who were back at work, right, there'd be more pay as you earn. If we had many many people who are involved in the economy. We'll have a lot of company income tax. So this thing of inclusive growth is not just a nice, good sounding political slogan. It's it's embedded on good economic theory that is going to increase our economic base, right? And then allow government, allow treasury to even decrease different tax rates. We are very clear that we may be reaching saturation levels of our ability to increase tax, and we don't want that because it starts impacting on growth, on the money that we can have to reinvest into the economy as private citizens, right? So your disposable income started decreasing. The money that is available to the private sector to reinvest in the economy, which must generate jobs, starts decreasing. We don't like this thing of paying grants to 17 million people. They also don't want it, by the way, right? So that's why we were saying when we talk about the radical economic growth, it's to the interest of everybody. And it's not meant to disempower anybody, but I think it's to the best of all of us. Because I also don't want to pay a lot of tax, right? So whether you are coming from the minister's party or you're coming from anywhere, if you are going to pay tax, you are paying it because you know it's your responsibility as a citizen. So I just thought let me say that all this, one, let's really celebrate our success. It's a big success. You know that I've been with the Standing Committee on Finance, and I've been dealing with these numbers. We're really concerned about our ability to raise this money, because obviously we are concerned about the debt level of the country. To have a debt of about 2.2 trillion, it's quite a problem, because it means you are paying a lot of your money to repay the debt. So, ladies and gentlemen, I think, Minister, I just wanted to make those inputs.
Minister and Deputy Minister, I want to address some of the issues and questions that were directed to me in particular. Firstly, the issue of the sudden change of behavior by the taxpayers. We would like to submit that media statements that infer that there is lack of leadership at SARS and trust have a concomitant impact on taxpayers not being able to do what is statutorily required out of them. We have noticed as of February that there were thousands of nil returns in terms of taxpayers, and this we could see from the systems that we have. Taxpayers who have been able to pay their taxes and submit provisional tax in August, all of a sudden, in February, we saw a very slow uptake. And this we're able to assess through our risk engine and analytics, and we were able to drill down to be able to see as to the level of compliance that is behaving in that negative manner. It was not done in the absence of data analytics that we have within the organization. So that became a worrisome aspect. And we took it to ourselves that we'll be able to contact each and every taxpayer that we have identified who have submitted nil returns. And we discovered that most of them were reluctant and giving all sorts of excuses, because it has been a pattern for over a number of years that we're able to follow the trajectory of various taxpayers in their behavior and the manner in which they pay their taxes. Minister is right. In my interaction with him yesterday until late in the evening, we did not discuss issues that are administrative nature. We discussed issues that pertaining to the revenue, because it's an issue that all South Africans have been waiting for to understand where we are. He needed to be given the full briefing with regards to the status of what we were at. And of course, my teams were on the ground able to deal with the issues of reconciliation of data and the results that came in on Friday. On the issue of Mr. Makwakwa, I want also to say it categorically clear that there is no second in command. Please, let's desist for creating positions which do not exist. I'm not sure as to where this second in command comes from, because I don't have a deputy commissioner. So Mr. Makwakwa is not deputy commissioner. He's a chief officer for business and in individual taxes. So I would kindly request that we don't give scripts to something that does not exist. Because we feed into a narrative where in some, then we create an animal farm. Some are equal and some are less equal. So Mr. Makwakwa is equal to other chief officers that I have in my area. With respect to the issues that you raised with me, with Mr. Makwakwa, it's a matter of investigation, and therefore it would be remiss of me and also irresponsible for me to get into that area because it's a matter for investigation. The investigation is continuing, and as it continues to be given the requisite reports and results, once we have been given the information, we'll be able to, but it's still an ongoing process. Now, with respect to all other things that related to Mr. Makwakwa, the same process and the principle applies. That internal processes of SARS will be followed, and once that matter has been completely distilled, then we'll address the matter that we have. Now, the minister has aptly responded to the question of reshuffle from a political perspective, but having said that, I want to indicate and echo the same sentiments that I have a good relationship with the minister, not based on our friendship or relations that we have in the past. It's more professional. I'm sitting here as Tom Moyane, Commissioner for SARS, responsible for the portfolio that I'm responsible for, and therefore I'll act in consonance with a code of conduct that is attributable to the position that I occupy. And therefore I'll defer my responsibilities and my relationship with him based on ethics and the manner in which we treat each other. That's the principle. And certainly the fact that the minister asked me to be able to sit with him, to be able to give him a briefing about this organization, epitomizes that there is a line of command and, of course, the line of accountability clearly defined. There was a question that was raised by Ferrell on the issue of data sets. I want to indicate that all macroeconomic data that we have are subjected to a scrutiny. And then we have a unit that deals with data analytics that resides with Dr. Randall Correlison. We don't make numbers. We don't cook them. We don't create them. We look at the whole bouquet of macroeconomic factors that affect us as a revenue organization. And based on that, we're able to extract the data that we provide you today. So it is in the spirit of also collaboration with other entities that have data. For example, the Reserve Bank, National Treasury. And I must also indicate that the Revenue Analysis Committee is a component of highly trained economists, both from the finance family, who are able to do data analytics and crunching and be able to give us a sense as to what is required of us, both as National Treasury, SARS, and the Reserve Bank, in terms of the economic projection that we all have at our disposal. Once again, there is an issue that you raised, Farrell, about you mentioned a number of them. As a tax administration, we don't talk about taxpayers' affairs. Yes, indeed, this is more in the domain, but it would be remiss of me to start speaking of taxpayer confidential information as to how matters are. If they're in the domain of investigation, let's allow the investigation process to take its course. And therefore, once that has been addressed, we'll be able you get the responses that are requisite to that. I think, Miriam, you spoke about the VDP. No, I'm coming to VDP. It's an issue of the numbers that I mentioned. Our sincere apology, and profoundly so, taking into account that there's a typo. There is a completely different number that we have here, and certainly would try and reconcile that. What has happened, you'd note, kindly so with humility, that as the teams were reconciling press statement and the like, we needed to be able to reconcile the two. And I had a different number and they had a number, so we'll be able to provide you through a media statement if there is what you call, there's a word in English. No, there's a word in, for correction, errata. Erratum. We'll come back to that. And certainly it's incorrect for a revenue administration to give data that is not properly corroborated. MoneyWeb, tax compliance. I indicated from the beginning that tax compliance and tax morality are the tenets of an organization, a country, wherein things are being done in consonance with your statutory duties. And we have said that paying taxes must be cool. Much as it is very difficult for people to pay their taxes, and certainly we could see where the money that we collect as a tax administration is being invested in, and therefore it's the requisite of the Ministry of, or the National Treasury to be able to do the distribution of the investment in accordance to the needs of the country. Minister has answered the issue of Davis Commission, and that's in his purview, and as the Minister of Finance, he'll be able to deal with that matter. Funeka, you spoke about VDP. The voluntary disclosure that we're speaking about, it's a matter that has been raised for a number of years for people to disclose some of their assets and monies that they may have in foreign banks and foreign accounts. And we have a team that is aptly dealing with this matter. We are compiling all data. And certainly South Africa, you would recall that we are also looking to country common reporting standards, and we are also aligned to automatic exchange of information in line with the OECD countries. And also we need to also indicate that we are the early adopters, wherein we want to stop all the illicit financial flows out of this country. The VDP in particular is meant to create an appetite for people to declare their taxes with the revenue authorities in the country where they are located. It is not to be seen as a punitive measure, but to make them feel that they are tax-compliant citizens. John, you raised the relationship with the previous minister. Certainly, it's an issue that is no longer on the table. I have a new minister, and therefore my focus is to deal with the matters at hand. I'm led by a principle and a philosophy that says, let me deal with the matters that are before me. And thank you very much.
Okay, so Miriam, the number in the press statement is correct. Yeah, so we'll go with that number. The lady at the corner here, go ahead.
It's from CNBC Africa. My question first is for the Commissioner. On that Friday, there was talk from some business leaders about a possible tax revolt, and this was in the wake of the political uncertainty and perceptions that we have a president that does not follow due processes and he is not accountable to anyone. I'd like to know how you'd respond to a potential tax revolt from business. And also my question for the Minister of Finance. So could you give us an update on Habib Bank? The bank that the Gupta family are trying to buy. It is understood that that deadline was on Friday. Have you approved this transaction? Thanks.
Okay, let me see if this new ends.